The mass incarceration of undocumented immigrants. For the introduction, I would just like to go over briefly how incarceration has been the number one form of punishment used to serve justice, and it has also been used as a deterrent so that others think twice before committing crime. However, many people don't think twice, and this has to do with that individual's personal reasons or reasonings behind committing a crime. What motivates them to have committed the crime? What's the gain from that crime? So I just want to take a little step back and then think about undocumented immigrants. Some of the people migrating to this country are seeking to start a new life, give a child a better life, or simply be able to live a life without fear of persecution. For some time now, I had thought about the connection of undocumented immigrants and incarceration and how the negative beliefs and perceptions that have been developed over time through the media, politicians, etc., on undocumented immigrants leads to far more severe consequences, not only for the undocumented immigrants themselves, but also to the native born citizens that belong to these racial and ethnic groups of undocumented immigrants. The research question that I present to you all is, what is the relationship between undocumented immigrants and incarceration? The two hypotheses that I came up with for this research question was one, there is a strong relationship between undocumented immigrants and incarceration rates here in the United States. Number two, due to negative public perceptions of immigrants as a threat to national security, this affects immigration laws by over policing communities that have higher rates of undocumented people. For my argument and thesis, I'd like to discuss how, due to the way that our government has been cultivated since the beginning, has been shown to be a huge indicator on how laws and policies have been created and then passed. Immigration laws from the beginning have been biased against certain groups of people, and they have favored immigrants from certain regions such as Germany, England, and Poland, to name a few. Laws and policies on immigration, both in the past and today, have made it hard for undocumented immigrants to successfully integrate and assimilate, therefore, causing them to turn to crime in order to survive, and has forced them to live illegally in the U.S. due to no other real choice. This then causes undocumented immigrants to live a life behind the scenes in order to prolong their stay in the U.S. as long as they can. My argument is this: why is it legal to detain, arrest, and incarcerate undocumented immigrants for a long period of time before sending them back to their country of origin? Why are private prisons filling up their beds with undocumented immigrants and making a profit from their loss of freedom? Why are Americans of color treated as if they were also undocumented by assumptions, perceptions, and beliefs due to the color of their skin? Why is it that children from undocumented that have undocumented parents have to carry on the label of also being undocumented due to having that label connected to them as if this were a birthright? I believe that due to these labels, we still have and still see disproportionate amount of people of color serving prison sentences in the US. I also think that the US is using harsher immigration laws and policies as a means to solve the rise of immigrants in the US by then incarcerating them and implementing harsher sentences so that private prisons also profit from this. For evidence number one, I would like to share some of the research that I discovered on the connection between undocumented immigrants and incarceration. Dr. Ewing explains in his article titled A Brief History of U.S. Immigration Policy that public and political attitudes towards immigrants have always been ambivalent, contradictory, and sometimes hostile. I was able to find more articles sharing the same evidence on how political and public beliefs do have an effect on how immigrants have been constructed as criminals due to these depictions. Dr. Ewing further explains how these perceptions and attitudes have found a way to also shape the way our criminal justice system operates. The results of this survey question shows that most respondents, 31%, agree that undocumented immigrants are more likely to be convicted of a crime than native-born citizens. However, 29% of respondents stated that they neither agree nor disagree with the question. I wonder if people answer strongly agree because they feel like people that are undocumented are more susceptible to committing crime due to not having legal status, and therefore they must rely on crime to make a living. Or perhaps if people chose strongly agree, we're more thinking like, how about the laws and policies maybe are a little bit more harsher when undocumented immigrants commit a crime? that they are more likely to be convicted for that crime due to these harsh policies and laws. Overall, this data was able to help me understand that most respondents that participated in the survey agree that undocumented immigrants are more likely to be convicted of a crime and incarcerated for that crime. The data for the question 86 shows that 33%, the majority of the respondents, agree that the depiction of immigrants as criminals does in fact influence laws to incarcerate undocumented immigrants. The results have helped me to understand that there are indeed people that believe that the way our government and media have depicted undocumented immigrants affects how law enforcement uses these laws against immigrants to incarcerate more of undocumented immigrants. So, this manner of depicting immigrants in a negative light forces people to then develop these negative beliefs and perceptions against immigrants. In conclusion, the relationship between undocumented immigrants and incarceration is very much relevant, as I was able to find research that corroborated my hypotheses. Understanding this relationship between undocumented immigrants and incarceration is important because the data shows how beliefs and perceptions towards undocumented immigrants can affect how the media and then politicians depict undocumented immigrants, and more importantly, how laws and policies are then created and passed. Moreover, this negative label that has been attached to undocumented immigrants also adds to the biases and systemic racism that still continues to happen towards native born people of color and non people of color. I hope that within these few minutes I was able to explain how undocumented immigrants play a significant role in the mass incarceration issue that we have been seeing, and that there is still more research that needs to be implemented on the connection of these two topics to better understand how to address it.